Do you think that God wrestles with us as much as we wrestle with God?
No.
You don't think so? I think maybe it's possible. That Esau story kind of raises some issues in the Old Testament lesson today. I said Esau, I meant Jacob. Esau is Jacob's brother. Here's Jacob's situation. Many years before we run into him in the lesson today, he has double-crossed his brother twice. He has stolen his brother Esau's birthright and his father's blessing. The second time Esau got double-crossed, he swore a vendetta against his brother Jacob, that he would kill him. And so when Jacob got rid of it, he fled the country. He went to a different country. There he married, had children, accumulated flocks and servants and slaves and all that sort of thing that was important in those days. And then he decided it was time to go back to the land that he first came from. And so on his way back, he is about to run into his brother Esau, who has all of his troops and family and flocks with him. And Jacob does not know what to expect. It's going to be the next day that he will meet Esau again. He doesn't know what to expect. Will Esau still hate him? Will he send his troops to slaughter Jacob and all of his family and all of his possessions and steal his possessions? Or will Esau forgive him? And so Jacob sends his family across the Jabbok Creek this night before, and he stays on the other side in solitude. And in his solitude, perhaps he is asking questions like, what have I done in my life? That here I am living in fear that my only brother is going to kill me. Or he may be asking, what does this all mean? Why is it like this? Will God help me? And who is this man then who appears and wrestles with Jacob? He appears to Jacob in his solitude and suffering. And this guy doesn't fight fair. When Jacob is prevailing, he hits Jacob in the hip joint and puts his hip out of joint. And this guy that Jacob is wrestling fears the daylight. He says, let me go because the sun is about to rise. And this one that Jacob is wrestling has power to bless and rename somebody. And this one that Jacob is wrestling won't give his name when Jacob says, what's your name? All indicators that it is God that Jacob is wrestling with. Lest the daylight show who it really is, lest Jacob get some power over him by having his name. Remember when Moses later on says to God, whom shall I send me, God, when I go to Pharaoh to tell him let your people go? And God doesn't give his name there. He says, tell him I am sent. I am who I am. So Jacob is wrestling with God, and that's how he understands it, because when he gets done, he names the place Peniel in Hebrew, Penny face, El, God, the face of God. I've seen the face of God, and I live to talk about it. And Jacob gets this new name, Israel, which in Hebrew can be construed to mean one who strives with God. One who wrestles with God. And Jacob walks away from the encounter with God, limping. He is wounded from the encounter. And you could say, well, God isn't fair. God was losing, and he put Jacob's hip out of joint. Yet think of what is happening. I think this is an incredibly powerful story. Think of what is happening in this story. God is making the divine self vulnerable to Jacob. in this way. And God, through this, blesses Jacob. Jacob walks away wounded, but he also walks away blessed. And ever after, the nation that will take its name from Jacob's new name, Jacob will be called Israel, and his descendants will be called the nation of Israel. Ever after that, that nation will do the same thing. The whole rest of the Bible is about how Israel wrestles with God, who God is, what does God mean, and how Israel fails but wrestles some more, and how Israel is wounded again and again in their struggles and in their wrestling with God. But how through that woundedness and through that wrestling, God is revealed to the rest of the world somehow. Somehow through that nation, God will be revealed to the rest of the world. In many ways, to follow God, it is to wrestle with God, and it is to walk wounded. And you may ask, well, why are the chosen people of God, why must they be wounded? Why doesn't God prevent them from being wounded if God is indeed God? The best answer I can come up with is that if God protected us from every hurt, we would not grow up. Oaks grow strong in adversities. Leave a baby in the crib, don't have the baby come out of the crib because you want to protect it. What do you have in 21 years? This wrestling with God with Jacob, this incredible act of humility on God's part, could it be that this is a sign that God needs Jacob as much as Jacob needs God? From Jacob's line, who will be born? Jesus. Jesus is a descendant of Jacob. God that seems to need Jacob as much as Jacob needs God. It is a sign, I think, a sign of God's passionate love for Jacob and for Jacob's people, for the nation that will come from Jacob. And when you think about it, Jesus is another sign from God. In Jesus, God comes and wrestles with us humans again. God wrestles with us humans in his Son, Jesus. And think about who walks away wounded from that wrestling match. God does. He walks away wounded in the wound of Jesus. A sign, again, that Jesus is God's ultimate wrestling with the human race and a demonstration of God's incredible passion and love and God's call to us to wrestle honestly with God himself. And I think, too, it is God's call to us to see in our wounded brothers and sisters one who has wrestled with God, who has walked away from God limping. And that we are all those who wrestle with God and sometimes walk away limping, but knowing God more deeply for the wound, being more blessed for the wound. For in the wounds of Christ, all of our wounds are blessed, sanctified, and redeemed. In the parable in Luke today, you have the unjust judge and you have the widow. The unjust judge holds all the power, and the widow holds no power whatsoever, except that she keeps coming to the judge. But the judge can say, get lost to her again and again and again. But finally, the one who has all the power says, no, I'm going to give you this power. And Jesus is saying, if an unjust judge does something like that, think about God, the just judge. who holds all the power. And that's kind of what God does. The one who holds all the power gives it up to wrestle with Jacob. The one who holds all the power gives it up to come and wrestle with Jesus, with the human race. And Jesus says, faith is the thing we grasp this by. Will there be faith when the Son of Man returns? God is in the struggle. God is in the struggle for justice. God has been in the struggle for humanity, with every wound in the human race. From slavery to the civil rights movement, to the women's equality movement, to the gay, lesbian, transgender movement, to the movements for the poor. God is in the struggles. God is there wrestling with the human race, calling them in faith to be more godly. And so, God calls us to be those who are for justice, who are for not just charity, but justice, and who are also for each other in our unity. Amen.